I'm Mama Gina, and I am continuing this series of talking with some of my favorite creators, creatrixes, about the creative process because mine is messy, and I assume that other people go through not not similar things maybe, but similar enough that we have something to talk about. So I'm with Sarah. Is it Sarah Grace? Sarah Grace, is that the whole
Yeah.
moniker, or is there a special name that you go by when you're creating?
My craft name is Bera Blackstone. Um,
Ah, okay.
and my Etsy shop is Blackstone Art and Craft. So, and Bera is
Yeah.
the craft name that I chose after the Cailleach, who is the most wonderful Scottish hag goddess. I love her.
Is that part of your muse?
Yeah, a little bit. A lot of my creative energy comes from trauma, comes from big uprooted changes. Like I have moved 22 times since I turned 18,
Oh
and
my.
more than half of those moves have been over 1,000 miles.
Wow.
So just, I don't know, her like the Cailleach's kind of seasonality and the way she moves and stomps across the landscape and claims it as her own wherever she lands is
Oh, wow. I love that.
speaks to me.
I love that so much. So let's just dive right in. Talk to me about first of all, tell folks what it is that you create. What do you do? I mean, I've seen you like grinding away on metal and doing all kinds of really cool stuff. So talk about what you do, and then let's talk about how you do it. Where you get your inspiration.
I'm a multimedia artist. I started with, um, well, in this current kind of path, I started with making like wire sculpture jewelry, just really basic little trees of life, and then kind of expanded that skill until I was making, stuff like this.
Oh, lovely.
This is
Yeah.
one of my ritual pieces that I wear. Um, and I just kind of like I really found a real creative energy with metal when I started working with that metal wire and just manipulating it with my hands and turning something so basic into something really elaborate. Um, and that kind of set me on a path of working with all different kinds of materials. So now I work with glass and I work with wood and I work with stone. um, and I'm learning how to forge
Yeah.
and like use hammers and powered and like learning how to use all of the power tools that I've been dreaming about um, learning how to use. So yeah, I find things, I break things, I make them into new things. Like this used to be a wine bottle,
Oh,
and
that's beautiful.
now it's like a vase.
That's beautiful.
Um,
I, Wow. Wow. I love the idea of the power tools and the hammers and the forge and all that stuff. That just that seems I mean, that seems like totally righteously heavy metal kind of to be in that environment just must fire you up, right?
Yeah, it's a really cool environment. It's a great way to like, I carry anxiety in my body, and so it's a really good way to be moving my body and using my body to make metal do what I want it to do. And so I get to kind of translate that anxious energy into movement and like into this kind of kinetic force that I use to make art, which is really fun for me.
That's brilliant. And thinking about that vase that you made from a broken wine bottle. I mean, okay, so I have to ask, did you break the wine bottle?
No, I cut the top off of it. And
Okay.
then like when I was halfway through cutting the top off, it broke.
It broke, and so you
Yeah.
created something out of that
Yeah.
thing. Um, I it's always interesting to me. I mean, I I have a heart for blues and in musically, and a lot of that music comes from a place of brokenness. and we make something beautiful and we recognize something beautiful out of that brokenness. And I'm always amazed at how many folks that create. I'm always amazed at how many of us have this broken space somewhere in us, and we're just trying to put the world back together again.
Yeah.
And it shows up in everything that we do, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, well, my partner um said to me once when I was finishing up something, I don't know. She said, "You make great art when you're in crisis."
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I really do. That's exactly the kind of alchemy that I do when I make art. Is just like living with mental illness is like depression and generalized anxiety disorder. There's just a lot going on that I need tools to quiet. So to be able to take all that excess and shape it into something and then make it into
Yes.
something that enriches the world instead of makes my inner world noisy and difficult, you know?
That is so beautiful. I totally hear where you're coming from on so many levels. And to take, because there's so much energy in that. And the truth is that there have been times in my life when I've been deliriously happy for a while, and not a note gets written.
Yeah.
I'm too busy being happy. And the second that things kind of sort of fall apart, or the second that I make room for the creativity, and with love, there's tons of room for creativity. But
Mhm.
when it's that kind of focused love that's focused on a person or a thing, for me, I lose my perspective of the big thing, and I forget about creating for a while, and it's so bizarre to
Mhm.
to come back into that creative force and go, oh yeah, something broke. Okay, I'm ready to write again. That's crazy. That's crazy. So, talk to me some more about this creative process. It sounds like um, you're redirecting energy, but is there something more? Is it where does your inspiration come from? Is it just you redirecting energy, or does this come from someplace else?
Um, I think it comes from a desire to grow and learn how to do more things. Um,
Cool.
like I anytime I see something cool being done by somebody really good at it, there's a little voice in my head that goes, I bet I could learn how to do that. I
Right?
bet I could figure that out. I should give that a shot. And through my childhood and my adolescence, what that looked like was just rapidly cycling through hobbies and like taking 8 months of piano lessons and then never practicing and quitting. And I really wish that I hadn't quit piano lessons.
Ah,
That's the one that I regret. And I still like one day when I've got like the means, I'm gonna go back and take some lessons. But I my family used to say I was a jack of all trades and a master of none.
yeah.
Uh, but like, I'm turning 39 this year, and
Congratulations.
thank you. So, I've spent like a good 3 decades just cycling through these hobbies and putting them down and picking them up and coming back to them and learning something new every time, to the point where I now have this really broad skill set that I can just kind of grow like a fungus into
Yeah.
other art forms, and then try to kind of put them together to make something new and different and kind of something that reflects who I am as a person, which is a weirdo who doesn't really fit in this world. So I make stuff that doesn't really fit in a store.
Right. Fits in your store.
Yeah, it fits in my store, fits in
Right.
my world.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to have these conversations is because I think sometimes as creators, as doers, not as consumers. And there's nothing wrong with folks on the other end buying our wares, our whatever it is. And we couldn't live without that, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't live without that exchange, because that's what keeps us alive and helps us to continue to create in the manifest world. But I think sometimes that we think that we're alone and we think that we're different, and really honestly, we're we're just we're differently abled, but we've, for the most part, we've learned to find a way to to turn that otherness into something beautiful, or maybe something ugly that's going to get people's attention, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or something that
um
opens a space, you
yeah,
know. That's what I love to do with my work in just some way, is open a space to think about something differently.
I love that. I love that. Do you have a mission statement kind of thing? Or have you ever thought about what your like real behind the scenes purpose is to anything that you create?
Um, in a gut sense that I still am having difficulty making into words.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's something that I feel deeply that it's my part of like the great work that
Nice.
is to make things that create conversations, to write things that create conversations, that there's the line from Leonard Cohen, there is a crack in everything, and that's how the
The
light gets
light.
in. I
Yeah.
live in that crack, and I'm just kind of like prying it open, you know?
Oh, how beautiful. How beautiful. That's a gorgeous way to say that, indeed. And see, he said a thing that you and I can connect to on a very deep level. And I
Mhm.
think that artists of every kind really do resonate with that in so many ways, because that's where we're living, you know.
Yeah,
For you, it's really physical. It feels like it's a really physical. I mean, like even when you talk about it, there's this kinetic energy to you when you talk about it. It's like I live in that crack, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, how amazing. So you get you get inspired, you get an idea. What's the flow there? How do you decide what it is that, or how it's going to manifest, and then how do you go about that?
Sometimes I get ideas that I sit on for years that I think like for example, I'm currently working on my grimoire, which my coven mate made a book for me. It's
Wow.
beautiful. And so, I've been kind of like collecting up ideas for it for like, officially for 5 years, but I dreamed of having like a grimoire since I was a kid, and I wanted to be a witch. And I was in my backyard gathering up different kinds of grass and dirt and putting them in a bottle with rainwater and shaking it up to make a potion. And, who knows
Yes.
what that was meant to do. But, there's always been a part of me that wants to put thing A with thing B, add this agent and shake it up and see what happens.
And create that space, right?
Yeah. So like the process from idea to fruition, sometimes I will just kind of file an idea away and then keep an eye out for things to sort of enrich and give more shape to it, and kind of
Yeah.
like sculpt it in the back of my head for a little while until it sort of comes to fruition. It's like, I know how I'm going to do that. And then I start, gathering the materials and making the plan and getting my hands dirty and turning on the Dremel.
Oh, wow. And I love that Dremel thing, man. I worked in polymer clay for a number of years, like every day. I was in the clay, and it was such a moving meditation for me to realize that I could. There was a moment when I was working on just a simple pendant, but it was artistic. It wasn't just a stamp it and bake it kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And there was a point when I pushed into the clay and realized that everything that I was doing was creating something out of that force that I was pressing into, you know? That it's the
Yeah.
whole dance of force and form. And I hadn't really ever thought of it in those terms. And me working with the clay with my hands and then using all the little cool tools, you know, the sanders and the Dremels and the, you know, everything that I could to etch and score and everything that I could use was just another way to make an imprint on my world of
Hmm.
some kind. And it was all a moving meditation because I don't meditate really well being still. But if I can keep my hands busy, then my mind goes where it's supposed to go, kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
for sure. And I think there's an element to all of my work that reflects that sort of connectivity through all of these different art forms, poetry, songwriting, composition, architecture, these sacred geometries that show up in math and in written music and in
yeah.
linguistics and in flowers and palm trees and agates and all of these wonderful things in our world, things that nature makes and things that we make with our hands and with our minds, just sort of drawing those connected lines and seeing, hey, this is like this in this way.
Yeah.
And what does that say about us as a species that, we just kind of like see these patterns and make these beautiful connections and develop these elaborate, ornate traditions around numbers, math, shapes that we see in nature.
Oh yeah, I hear you. I see fractals and Fibonacci sequences and all of that kind of stuff everywhere I turn. I see it in a leaf and I see it in the sky and I see it, in Hubble, pictures, and
Yeah.
it always astounds and amazes me that some people don't see those things. For me, that's the hard part, is not seeing it because it seems to be everywhere in my world. And
Hmm.
there's almost a space in my heart that says, "Oh, poor thing, you really don't see the beauty in anything, do you?" It's kind of, yeah. I feel like they're the ones that are disabled and emotionally stunted sometimes, the people that can't see the beauty around them. So,
I feel like it almost comes with it's like an initiatory thing. It was for me, for sure. Just with every level of initiation I've progressed through on my path, the world becomes so much richer, and things like I see connections and correspondences and these beautiful dances everywhere that I never noticed before. And I think just part of it is through that process of initiation, what that really is for say like the non-faith based artist, for the non-pagan, um for whoever you are, whatever tradition it is. It's a process of turning an intentionality and creating a sacredness.
yeah,
Sacredness doesn't just belong to religion, it belongs to everyone.
right.
To make it special, to make it to set it apart, and make it intentional. And then suddenly you find the world starts giving that back to you.
Yeah. 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 I hear you. Make that space, like you said. Create that
Yeah.
space. So, how do you know when you're done with the piece, whatever it is?
um Usually I can just look at it and say, yep, yep, that's done. That's what I envisioned, that's what I intended to create, and that is what I made. um Sometimes the process is less clear cut because like sometimes I make things that I just kind of design out of nowhere, like my thesis, for example, which is very long.
Oh,
Um,
oh, how beautiful. Yeah.
and all of these ribbons have little amethysts at the end of them. And this is, I thought it was finished, but it's not. Now I'm like, no, I need to put beeswax on the ends of on the tips of the pine cone so it doesn't get worn and fray.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so sometimes pieces stay alive for a while and keep nudging me to, there's still one more thing. There's still one more thing. Um, but sometimes a piece will just, it'll tell me, like, I'll just make one last adjustment to a branch in a tree, and you're like, yeah, yep, that's the shape. That's it.
Got you. Got you.
I
Yeah.
just kind
It's funny. It was years ago, one of my mentors, and he's a musician, but he's also a mixing engineer and owns a wonderful studio here in Tampa. And I was doing some work at his studio, and I understood the music side of things, but I didn't understand what he did. And I didn't understand at the time that all that technical stuff was really musical. I didn't get that at the time.
of,
And we were talking about how he said something about, when it's done. He said, because there's this thing that just happens in my chest, and it just everything falls into place. He says it's a physical sensation when
yeah.
everything is exactly where it belongs. And I thought, oh my gosh, we all have these different little things that happen. Because for me, if I'm writing a song and I know I'm on the right track, and I know when it's done is because I cry. It physically gets me, you know. When I
Yeah.
was working in the clay, there was just this sensation of it was like a giant exhale. It was like I can stop pouring myself into this now,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's a
And
real physical sensation.
yeah, it's really gut level for me. um and it's kind of like it's almost like a cutting the cord, right, and releasing that piece
Yes,
into the
yes.
world.
Yeah. And I know some people who paralyze themselves into never releasing anything into the world because they want it to be perfect.
Yeah.
Um, I like the concept of creating things that have some imperfection in them, or have something you know, that appears to be broken even though it's a whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. How very cool. So, so you've got an Etsy site. Is there a website for you personally, or the Etsy site is where you send people for your creations?
The Etsy site is where I send people for now, because unfortunately I still have a 40-hour a week day job, so
Oh, good. It's all
it,
good.
so I only have so much time and so many spoons to put into that kind of artist side, but there's also a part of me that doesn't want to monetize it too hard. Um,
Understood.
that's why I
Understood.
never pursued music as a career. I I have 16 years of opera training under my belt.
Oh my
Um,
goodness, I did not know that.
yeah,
Wow.
and I play 5 different instruments. Um, but and people always said, why you should be a singer. You should go into music. And I've always known that I do not have the temperament for that career. Um, I and I've always known on a gut level that if I monetized music and made it something that I relied on to keep a roof over my head, it would take
Mm-hmm.
all the joy out of it for me,
Oh,
because
I
I grew up in an environment of lack of resources.
got you.
And so having to, of just having to rely on that paycheck, you know, to tie that anxiety producing paycheck to the thing that I love, like the art form that I love most.
Yes. Yes.
Music is the thing that I keep for myself, and I'll share it with other people on a stage,
Right.
but it's not a career that I'm gonna
I
rely on.
I hear you. I kind of went in the entirely opposite direction. I had to have a day job for the time that I was raising my son, and I made that choice. Um, and so for 17, almost 18 years, right up until he graduated, I was a legal secretary, and then I was a paralegal, and I worked in corporate America in their, corporate legal offices. And every day for me, it was a trade off every single day. And I still sang on the weekends, and I still wrote books on the weekends, and I still did all the other artistic and creative things that I could, and filled up as much time as I could with creating these other things. Um, it was it was funny when I finally did give my notice. Jesse had turned 18, and I woke up one day and realized I hated my job and I was miserable. And I thought, why am I so miserable and I don't want to go into work anymore, and I'm calling in sick and mental health days and everything else? I thought, what is wrong with me? Because I choose every day to come into work. I mean, literally, I would wake up every morning and go, I'm doing this because I love my family and this is the best way to take care of them. And suddenly he was 18 and I didn't have to do that anymore. And when I realized that, I was like, I can leave. I can leave. And it was so funny because most people's reaction on the corporate side was, oh, you're so brave to go be a musician on the road, because that was the plan. And that's exactly what I did. I geared up and I went on the road hardcore. And I mean, out for like 9 months at a time, not coming home, sleeping in my truck in Walmart parking lots, and everything that goes with being on the road, and living kind of hand to mouth, but playing the music and writing the music that I loved. And they were all like, you're so brave. And I said, no, no, you don't understand. I was afraid not to live this new life. More afraid of that than I was, of not being able to go pursue my creativity.
Yeah.
I had to get out of that day job. I would be dead by now.
That's the dream, like I'm trying to buy a house right now, and
Yay!
like that's step one, is like, get my house and start making my space to make more stuff. And then, also make that house better, and then sell it, and then get the house that I really want, where I can build the workshop. And
So
when
you
I
have a
build the
plan.
workshop, yeah, when I
I
build the
love it.
workshop,
Yeah.
I might be able to quit my day job when I build the workshop, because then I will have all of the tools and the means and the skills by then
Hmm.
to crank out enough awesome stuff and things and art to.
We are a work in progress, right? And we make sacrifices so that the people around us can be supported in some way. But in the end, I think that if we don't follow our muse, follow our inspiration, and bring this stuff into the world, that you said it, it's part of the great work. It really honestly is. And what I'm watching right now in the midst of COVID for the past year, so many of my creative friends have begun. Now it's like the body of work that they really always ever wanted to do, suddenly they're all, I have the time to do this. I really didn't want to do it this way, but you know what? This is what I have. And, so there's new music, and there's new books, and there's new art, and there's all of these things coming into the world. And I'm not saying COVID is a good thing. I'm not saying that. But what we are doing with the time that we've been given is so incredible. And I'm just so jazzed watching everybody just grow by leaps and bounds. We're honing our technical skills, and we're allowing our muses to like work through us, and it's just amazing to me. It really is.
Yeah, and I think, it's something that that's a current that anybody can tap into as well. If you are willing to kind of put the phone down and tap out of the online world for a while, because the online world is what sucks you away from your art. Um,
The stupid games on your phone, right? I'm
yeah,
saying, and what I really mean is the stupid games on my phone. There are times when I just delete every app on my phone except for my phone, you know, because I'm like, I can't because it automatically sucks you in, and
yeah,
suddenly hours are gone that you could have been bringing something beautiful into the world,
yeah.
and
And that's not always a bad thing. Like
mhm,
sometimes, like right now, because like I'm putting offers on houses and shoveling money into savings like crazy and super stressed, like my creative output is not super high right now. So I am spending a little more time just like watching YouTube and just sitting and not putting pressure on myself,
right,
to keep making when my spirit's just like, I just need to take a minute.
right, right.
So that's it's not a bad thing to kind of let yourself get lost in that kind of distraction for a while.
Right.
um, but it's important to remember to turn back and remember your art and refocus once the resources come back.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, this has been amazing. I love seeing your face because I miss your face, and I love that you are creating and you are finding ways to do that even in the midst of all of the crazy. I will, if you will send me the link to your Etsy shop, I will make sure that it goes in the show notes.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you want to share with folks about your creations and your creativity?
um I would say, like, if you have that little voice that I do that says, I bet I could figure out how to do that, chase it. I would say, like, go get yourself, like, my partner just went and got herself a box of crayons and a pad of big, like, drawing paper. Start,
Yes.
get in touch with the inner child, go get some Play-Doh. Like, what you want to make, it doesn't have to be a major, like, massive work of high class art. These categorizations are arbitrary and placed on us by the culture in which we live, which has a lot of value sets that are very misguided. So find that inner kid that just wants to learn how to do stuff and learn how to make stuff, and chase it down and see what kind of new skills you get out of it. Because I never thought, like, even 3 years ago, I never thought that I would have hammered a blade out of a cylinder. And now I know how
Ah,
to do that. Like, it's so cool.
that's awesome.
And all it
That
took was the opportunity to get a piece of metal in a forge and a hammer in my hand and an anvil. Thank you, Candy, for giving me that opportunity. And just getting my hands dirty and doing it. And, that's all it took
that's
to do it
brilliant.
and practice.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thanks for having
Um
me.
Absolutely. We'll get that website posted, and I will see you again soon.
Yes.
Hopefully at some point in the future when we don't have to be masked and we can actually hug each other. Yes.
Yay.
Those things
We
will
can make
happen
some
in the
music.
future. That's one of the things I'm creating right now is a future where I can hug my friends again.
Yes. Can't wait. Can't
All
wait.
right. We will see you later. Bye.
Bye.